Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the vampiric leader of the Sand Lane, the final boss of the Bloodwing, Blood Queen Lana'Thel.
You have made an unwise decision.
Now, Lana'Thel is a frantic DPS race of a fight, where you're managing a growing vampiric debuff on your raid that doubles each bitten player's DPS, but if mismanaged will cause them to be mind-controlled and almost assuredly lead to a wipe. This fight is also the easiest of the final wing bosses in ICC, so I'd recommend you give it a go as early as possible on Heroic because that 277 tier will really help increase your raid's power. Alright, as far as raid composition goes, this is a standard 2-tank, 5-healer fight. You could likely go with fewer healers, but I wouldn't do more than 5 as the DPS check is pretty tight and you'll need all the damage you can get. Okay, so let's discuss the most important mechanic on this fight first, Vampiric Bite and Essence of the Blood Queen. About 15 seconds into the fight, Lana'Thel decides it's time to take the kid gloves off and charges the highest non-tank threat and bites them, giving them the debuff Essence of the Blood Queen, a 1-minute debuff that doubles your damage and heals you for some of your damage dealt. Now, when the debuff expires, you turn into a bloodthirsty vampire, losing all of your abilities you normally have and only have one option, Vampiric Bite. This ability should be located on your 1 key, and you've got 10 seconds to bite someone in melee range, giving them the Essence of the Blood Queen debuff and reverting to your normal form, also with the Essence of the Blood Queen. So what this means is, you've got a multiplying debuff that you need to manage. It should look like this. 15 seconds in, bite 1 goes out. 1 minute later, that person must then bite somebody. Now we've got 2 debuffs. 1 minute after that, those 2 people need to bite 2 more, leading to 4. A minute after that, those 4 bite 4, leading to 8. Finally, a minute later, in the final minute of the fight, those 8 all bite 8 people, leading to 16 debuffs total. From this point, the boss should be dead, or you'll hit an enrage and wipe anyways. There are a few ways to manage this. Foji has a great weak aura that I've linked below that should show you based off some various data like location and DPS who your most optimal person to bite is. I've linked it below as well as his Discord if you have any questions. You could also pre-plan what every person is doing, but this can easily go south if someone screws up, but it is possible. Generally, good targets for this are fire mages, feral druids, warriors, rogues, stuff like that. But I wouldn't worry too much about min-maxing this debuff. Everyone is a good target, except for healers and tanks. For us, we trust the weak aura and do what it tells us to do. There's one other wrinkle for this, and it only pertains to the first person bit. You want to delay your bite as long as you can. The way it lines up with one of her other abilities, Blood Bolt Whirl, means you really want to delay when people get the frenzied bloodthirst. So delay that first bite as long as you can. After that first one, don't worry about it, just bite your assignment. Oh, and one last thing, occasionally someone in our raid would have issues with their bars not swapping when they needed to use the Vampiric Bite. So throw this in a macro and have it handy in case that happens. It might save you one day. Okay, so that's Vampiric Bite and Essence of the Blood Queen. Let's talk about her other abilities. First, she does a constant ticking shadow damage on the whole raid for the entire fight called Shroud of Sorrow. This does 4,500 shadow damage every 2 seconds to everybody in the room. Not a big deal, just heal through it. After that, Blood Mirror. This is super simple. The player closest to her current target gets Blood Mirror, causing an equal amount of shadow damage. This just means you need both tanks to stack on top of each other so that the damage is applied to someone tanky enough to eat it. Speaking of that, she'll also apply Delirious Slash to the off tank, whoever is soaking Blood Mirror. Pretty simple, just heal through it, no big deal. Next, Swarming Shadows. 30 seconds into the fight and every 30 seconds thereafter, she'll cast Swarming Shadows on a target. If you get this debuff on you, you'll quickly drop purple fire on the ground, so move away from the raid. We like to tell people to run towards the walls as it's unlikely for anyone to be near there. Once it expires, jump back into the action. After that, we've got Pact of the Dark Fallen. This is similar to Fatal Attraction from Mother Shiraz for those that remember that. 3 random non-tank people get a debuff that causes them to explode with shadow damage every second, unless all 3 stack on top of each other for a second. Once they do, the debuff should fall off, and those people should then return to their spots. She'll also cast random Twilight Bolts every so often at a couple players in the room. We spread out specifically for this, and for her next ability, which is Bloodbolt Whirl. Okay, so about 2 minutes into the fight, she'll stop attacking and run to the center of the room and cast Incite Terror. This is a 4-second room-wide fear that can be dispelled. Right after casting it, she takes off and flies upwards before spinning around and casting Bloodbolt Whirl. 3 waves of Twilight Bloodbolts will hit the raid, dealing a bunch of damage and splashing to anyone within 6 yards. As she moves, the raid needs to move to pre-planned positions, spreading out far enough, and then after the fear goes out, they move back to those positions and wait for that 3rd tick of Bloodbolt to hit them. Be careful here, because the Bloodbolts do have travel time, so even though you've seen her finish her cast, you need to wait until the 3rd one hits before you move back into position. Once she lands, take her back to her position on the stage and keep pumping. She'll do this twice, so you'll want to plan your cooldowns accordingly. DSAC, Divine Hymns, Bubbles, whatever you need to do to stay alive and keep pumping her. DPS defensives are great here. Alright, that's it for all of her abilities. Let's get into the walkthrough and see how it plays out. On pole, we run in and specifically set up in positions that we've pre-planned. This is how we've set it up, but don't stress too much about this, just spread out. Now we like to give our Fire Mage the first bite. You can choose whoever you want, but we misdirect him to try to keep him up there on threat. Regardless of who gets bit, the person should be free to pump super hard. Packed people run to the middle and eliminate that debuff, swarming shadows to the sides of the room, keep the raid up, and pump. Now 1 minute in, the first person bit will need to bite somebody. Like I said before, try to wait as long as you can before you bite the person you're assigned to. This will offset the bite to after the Bloodbolt Whirl, so you don't have to worry about it during it. You want all of your abilities during that window. Now you've got 2 people with the debuff, and damage begins to ramp. 2 minutes in, she'll run to the center of the room and fear everybody. We like to have the Disc Priest fear ward themselves for this, and then cast Mass Dispel on the raid to try to keep the fear off everybody ASAP. It's critical that everyone gets to their assigned positions so that you don't splash the Blood Bolts. If you're out of position, you'll likely splash too much damage and it could lead to deaths. DSAC this, DPS, use defensives, survive the damage, and keep going. Remember, she does 3 waves of Blood Bolts, so don't move until you see the 3rd one land on your head. Once it does, you're free to move a bit. The tank should drag her back onto position, and the fight continues this way. 2 bites becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. We'll get 1 last Bloodbolt Whirl, then a minute of crazy burn with 16 people bitten. This is where you want to send your Bloodlust, when most of the raid is bitten for double damage. If no one's died, you should have the DPS to squeak out a kill, which should get notably easier as the raid collects ICC gear later in the phase. Down she goes and collect your 277 loot. Congratulations. Okay, let's talk about some tank tips. There's not a whole bunch to do on this fight, just stack on top of each other and make sure she doesn't move. There should be no reason she's adjusted outside of when she flies up in the air for Bloodbolt Whirl. And when she lands again, put her right back to where she was. The raid is specifically placed for her to be there, so help everybody out and oblige. For the healers, this can be a pretty intense fight on mana, so send those innervates early and often. DSAC rotate the Bloodbolt Whirl, but also AM Shadow or DSAC the Pact of the Darkfallen. It can do a lot of damage to the raid, and having some cooldowns to help mitigate it will keep everybody healthy. And Paladins, you can bubble the Bloodbolt Whirl to help some of the healing. There's not really a place to use it otherwise, so you might as well. And for the DPS, please, for the love of God, don't grief each other with things like Righteous Fury or D-Stance to get that first bite.
Yeah, spotted him. Hey, shitbag Masoka, turn off your fucking Righteous Fury, douchebag. Imagine. You're so fucking cool. Sign my titties. Will you sign my titties?
Do what you've been assigned to. Be a team player and pass that Vampiric Bite to the person you're supposed to. Watch that Fujiwara and follow it. Also, like I said earlier, defensives during the air phase will help your healers out. Save AMS, IBF, Bark Skin, whatever, for it to give them some reprieve. It can be a lot of damage. Okay, well that's it for Blood Queen Lana'Thel. This is the easiest of the Final Wing bosses, so definitely give her a try early on. She's worth spending the time on. If you enjoyed this guide, consider throwing me a like and subscribe. It helps me immensely, and I super appreciate it. There's an assignment sheet and a loot prio guide coming really soon, but if you're looking to get early access, check out mine or Pummel's Patreon. It's all up there for easy viewing. And thanks to everyone who supported me on there. Guys, it means a lot. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, that's it for me. See you all in the next one.